Okay, so MidJourney version 5 was only released like less than 24 hours ago, and I thought it would be fun to go through some of the biblical artwork I've been making through it. It is amazing. It is a total game changer, and I know everybody keeps saying that every time a new version of one of these text to image softwares get released, but this one is really amazing. Okay, so what I have right here is an image I made with a previous version of MidJourney. I was looking for the basket that carried Moses. So the prompt was a makeshift basket made of bulrushes and patched with pitch in the bulrushes and everything. And it did a pretty good job. It looks not too bad, but let's see what MidJourney version 5 does with this. And you can see it's quite an impressive improvement. We have the full setting with the reeds. The basket itself is a lot more detailed. It's really quite photorealistic. I specifically loved that one in the bottom left. And it does look on paper as a fairly good representation of something that is from ancient times. Now, for those of you who are anthropologists, it will be interesting, and I would love to see your comments if you want to comment below. How well does this do at equivocating, certain styles of actual fashion versus just the stereotypical what we see in biblical movies or in church plays or something like that. It will be interesting to see because as the software develops, we'll actually get more authentic representations of what things might have looked like in different biblical stories. So here I asked for a Moses with the 10 Commandments, but I specifically, I think I put it in, I was like ancient parchment, things like that. And you can see it's a little bit strange. It almost looks like a piece of paper, but the photorealism of the character himself, Moses, is quite good in all of these versions, very coherent. These all look fairly believable. We're not getting any of that sort of messed up fingers. We're not getting a lot of weird artifacts. The clarity is there. The lighting is really impressive. Just stunning, right? Here you can see it doing illustration. Now, this is a more complicated prompt because I had a father reading to his kids and I had a bunch of different artist illustrators in to try to give it inspiration. And so you can see there's a little bit more going on here. There's some artifact issues. So I'd want to keep tinkering with a prompt like this. But with just some tinkering, I'm sure I could get it to give some coherency. But you can see on the bottom right, there's fingers meshing and things like that. But it's quite close. And one big difference between this and previous versions of MidJourney and other image prompting AI is that it is great at doing multiple subjects. It's really impressive. Now, this is a collage of Disney animation style of the story of Jacob in the Bible. Now, one on the bottom right is a little bit strange, right? Because it's like a half older, half younger person. But in general, you can see it nails the style perfectly. And some of those images are so believable that this could be something from Disney, or it actually reminds me a lot of like the Nest animated stories of the Bible, if you ever watched that as a kid. Very similar style, but it's just, wow. It's really cool. And I mean, I didn't give it all these prompts. I literally said, a collage of screen grabs from a version of the story of Jacob from the Bible as animated by Disney. And yeah, it's quite close. Again, more tweaking, and we can get a lot better with that. Here, I was looking for trying to give a comic book illustration of Elijah, and I think it nailed it pretty close, except for the wardrobe. I wouldn't think Elijah would be quite that immodestly dressed. But you can see there, you have the hand gripping the sword. It's quite believable. There are only 5 fingers. The shading, the lighting, the expression on his face, just stunning artwork. Again, these are all first attempts for the most part. There's a couple of examples where they're not, but this is just me on a first attempt prompt, getting the results. And it's just such a big changer from previous versions where you really had to tweak a lot, try it a lot of times, waiting for that good image. Nearly all the good images from version 5 are going to be coherent. You do need to tweak a bit for style, but for coherency, it's not quite the same thing. Now, I don't always think version 5 is superior. So this was a double exposure of I was trying to get the prophet Jeremiah with a double exposure of the temple being destroyed around him. It's just a cool graphic style. And it's very coherent, but I actually preferred version 4 for this. And I'm going to show you that because even though it's more abstract, I think for the purpose of the prompt, I think these look a lot better, right? They're not as clear, right? There's a little more artifacts going on, but they're more interesting. So this is something that if you use MidJourney, you may want to play with, right? If you're getting kind of a blander result than you want, you may want to go back to version 4. Although, again, there might be more prompt crafting I can do to get this sort of result in version 5 and then keep that coherency as well. Here I have Samuel being awoken in the middle of the night. It ended up being a little more glamour shoddy than I expected with like the mat, because I tried to make it, I think I had like miraculous or whatever, so it's giving it that almost pixie dust quality. There's a really beautifulness to it. The one on the bottom left is gorgeous, although it seems way more opulent than I think Samuel's bed would have looked like, but it's very beautiful, isn't it? And then here is Moses' mother at the on the Nile River. Just stunning, absolutely stunning. I love the lighting and the cloud cover at the top. Just brilliant stuff. And then this was specifically a more basic prompt. It was a Middle Eastern man in ancient Israelite garb, I believe, dancing in the sunlight. But I love how it even like kicks up the dust underneath and you have the breaking through the clouds. I mean, these images are really quite stunning. The styling of the hair and whatnot doesn't quite read right to me. It does read modern. Again, this is something that I'm curious what like actual historians would say, and the clothing and whatnot, and maybe there are ways to, again, prompt it with some more details. But on the face of it, I mean, this is no worse than any sort of typical stock image that you would get. It's a complete game changer. If you're writing a sermon and you need an illustration, if you're somebody who is writing a book and you need an illustration, this is a field where we were not as served. Biblically minded people were not as served because artists tend to not do a lot of biblical imagery, or they'll just do the standard or children's imagery. You just don't have a lot of stock photography on the same level for Christian concepts as you do for other concepts, right? Because the market isn't as big and just lots of reasons. And that's going to change. And just imagine when these things can move. And we're going to get to that a little bit later. Here's another look from that set. This was just my first prompt. I didn't really tweak a lot. The way that the clothing looks, again, it looks a little more costumey, modern than like actual era, but it totally gets across what you're getting. The hair looks a little long too, perhaps, for the styling of the era, etc. And it looks. The challenge with something like this too is that you're using the modern equipment, as it were. So like, do you decide to age it up somehow? Do you try to make it look more old-fashioned? There's certainly a lot of different camera techniques you can use to maybe give it a more stylistic look, to try to make it feel old. It's weird because it's like, well, they didn't have cameras at all back then, but sometimes when you use different kinds of cameras and stuff, it just reads more authentic because it looks like something from the past. Now, here's an illustration. I was specifically asking it to do Ivan Earl, who is a worked for Disney. He did the backgrounds for Sleeping Beauty, and I wanted the Exodus from Egypt from there. Now, it ended up being a little more tropical looking in some of them, but the bottom right is quite close, and it quite good at nailing his style. Ivan Earl was very big on horizontal and vertical, like the juxtaposition, and it gets that, especially that bottom right image. It is rather stunning. And again, just wait till we can animate this. It's going to happen. Now, one thing that can come up is whether or not it even knows what you're asking for. So in this, why we're getting all these weird kind of artifacts is because I was trying to do a Warner Brothers style, Tex Avery, simple animation style of like Joshua and the Battle of Jericho or something like that, people holding shofars, and didn't know what a shofar was. So, and now I could feed it what a shofar is and maybe it would understand. I can tweak with that. But it is challenging. Yeah, sometimes you're going to come up with objects that it doesn't really know how to demonstrate. But again, if we eliminate the weirdness going on with the instrument, the style is dead on for what I was asking for. It is really, really close. And some more tweaking would probably get me even closer. This was an attempt at basically Abraham looking at the stars. He might be a little younger than he needs to be. The other thing you'll notice is that it starts to put some star pattern on his clothing. But again, I mean, it's just a beautiful image, isn't it? I mean, gorgeous. This one is the same prompt set, but you see the stars are not appearing on his clothing. I love the shadow, although it does look very studio photography, doesn't it? It really does look like somebody like put a light there to shine down on him. But that was kind of intentional. I was looking for a magazine photo style, so it did nail that. It was exactly what I was looking for. And it's fun, you know, with these things you can play with different stuff like, you know, Moses taking a selfie and all kinds of stuff, you know, like what would have that looked like, and have a lot of fun with it, of course. And we'll get to some more fun, silly stuff a little bit later. This was Samson. I wanted it in the style of a movie poster. This one I wasn't as pleased with. Some more artifacts going on. I think it was too vague of a prompt. The upper right is pretty good. But yeah, I don't know what's going on in the bottom left. We've got like some weird, I don't know, Donald Trump thing in the clouds. And then the one on the bottom right, it's like, I don't know, the glowing, you know, it definitely has that style of a movie poster, kind of like a Star Wars one or something like that. But yeah, not quite great. And this was an example of how emotion can affect image. I was trying to get Sarah laughing at finding out she's going to give birth to a child, and I wanted her to be excited, and it made her look completely nuts. Pretty believable, but yeah, not really what I was looking for. I did some tweaking, and I said embarrassed. This is a little bit better. I still need to keep tweaking. That one on the bottom right is pretty disturbing with the eyes, but in general, though, you know, pretty impressive, right? Now, you don't only have to go like with standard biblical imagery like from stories. What about like stock photos? You know, this is a man studying the Bible in, you know, the wilderness, and you can see some just beautiful shots there. I wanted him, you know, on the cleft of a rock with a forest around him. And, you know, these sort of things at first glance, you're not going to really notice anything. You know, you might be able to when you really dig in. Some of these, even if I dug in, I would have no way of knowing they're AI. Not until I dug, and even then, I wouldn't be sure. Here's another illustration. This is the burning bush. I combined a bunch of artists, including Van Gogh, and you can definitely see the influence of Van Gogh. And again, this is a wonderful thing, right? There's all of these talented artists from the past that made beautiful art, but they were not making art about biblical concepts, right? And so now we can see what biblical concepts would have looked like from their eyes, perhaps, you know, or at least, you know, get a sense of that. So it's really cool. This is, again, trying to just make a basic stock photo. I wanted a young woman reading the Bible in the middle of more or less Zion National Park. I gave it specific prompts for the rock formations that are found in Zion National Park, and it nailed it. It really does look like that. And a lot of coherency going on here with the hands. There's a backpack. Here's another one. And yeah, at first glance, particularly, it would be very hard to tell that this is made by a computer. You know, nothing is real in this. This is not, just so you know, MidJourney does not composite anything from online. That is not what it's doing. That's not the technology. So it's not like it's photoshopping a bunch of things together all of a sudden. What it's doing is it's studying what things look like, and it's recreating it in the same way that somebody at an art gallery might be there, you know, painting the same painting they see in front of them because they're just figuring out the technique they used in front of them, which, you know, I've seen all the time. But it's just a computer doing that. It's amazing. But the difference is that unlike a person, the computer is so sophisticated that it can think about what that style means and then duplicate the style with whatever you want. Yeah. So I mean, really, to me, I think of this as the level of when photography was invented. It's huge. Now, for this, I wanted a woman reading the Bible in a Disney storybook style. Totally nailed it, right? The woman even looks a little bit like Tiana or something, but not dead on, right? She's similar. but not dead on. And the coherency here is quite good. There's a little bit going on there with the boy with his hand that looks a little bit strange. You know, a couple of things. There's a little bit of weirdness. But again, you could go through a few times with a few different prompts. This was just a first pass and perhaps clean it up. But yeah, overall, beautiful image. And then you can do even more basic paintings, right? I was going for a kind of a mid-century modern. I didn't quite nail what I was going for, but I did like the results. I was looking for a mid-century pop art specific artist, and it doesn't quite know what his style is like, but it is some beautiful results here. It really reminds me a lot more of like Mary Blair than what I was looking for. But this is men reading the Bible, and I just love it. I love the colors, just wonderful. For this, I wanted a 1950s, like a little golden book style of people going to church. Pretty much nailed it, right? There's a couple of weird things if you really examine with some of the hands and things like that, like what they're holding, but it's quite close. And again, you know, if you're somebody like me who actually does graphic design, I could go back in and I could tweak. One thing you'll notice is that the mom actually has 3 feet, 3 legs. So I could fix that, you know, I could paint that out and things like that, or I could just re-render it and see if it goes away, or you know, tweak it a little bit. The church building looks a little bit strange too, because it's got like the 2 steeples. So, you know, there's little bits and bobs that you might adjust, but it gets you so close to where you need to be at, and often it hits it right out. And of course, this is just version 5. Version 6 is coming. This is speaking of Mary Blair, one of my favorite artists. This was Moses, done by Mary Blair. And yeah, nails the style pretty well. It's not my favorite era of Mary Blair, but I wonder if I could tweak that by adjusting what it is that I'm looking for. But yeah, I like it quite a bit. And then this is a DVD screen grab of Spider-Man reading the Bible. Looks like it came right out of the cartoon show, if you ask me. The book looks a little strange with the overlapping pages, but yeah. And I did not specifically tell it to put it in a church. That was something the computer just decided to do on its own, but definitely makes sense. Here is another one. And this is more like actually from the movie. And again, look at the textures on the suit. The suit itself, quite good. All those lines, you know, are following through. The fingers. It's pretty impressive. And even this, the book is quite coherent looking on this one. Pretty good. It's a little bit weird if you look at the spine really carefully, but it's quite good. And then this one even manages to look like the actor whose name is escaping me from the MCU, but Tom Holland. But not quite. Close, though, right? But you'll notice that because I told it to give me a screen grab, it's also making it look like it's a screen grab, right? It's not a completely clear image. It looks a little bit like somebody just paused something on their TV or something like that. This is a 1950s comic book of a biblical story. Yeah, style's perfect. The Lion King, Simba reading the Bible to Mufasa reading the Bible to Simba. This one, it didn't quite know what to do with the characters because the one on the upper left kind of looks like Simba and Nala are together, and it doesn't quite know how to make the book work. The one on the bottom left isn't too bad, but you know, it doesn't have a lot to go off of because they never really hold anything like that. So the top 2, it just didn't even bother. And then the bottom left, it did. But I mean, pretty close artwork there. Not quite dead on in terms of the style. The bottom left is pretty close there on the Mufasa, but yeah, in general, just super impressive. I was asking for a t-shirt for kind of like a Passover motif with the lamb, and yeah, I mean, it definitely captures what a t-shirt art style looks like, and with all the colors and all of that. Yeah. This is almost like a glamour shot, right? What if Moses had been brought into the studio? Yeah, this is great. You'll notice it doesn't quite know what to do with the writing on the 10 Commandments there, so it almost looks like cuneiform or something like that. But again, that's something that somebody like I could go in and I could fix because I could composite it with something. Writing is something that MidJourney doesn't do well. If you ask it to give it text, it often gives you very strange results. So, but I imagine that might change in the future. But for now, no, text is not something generally you can do. You can do corporate logos that it has a lot of information for, but you're not likely to get a good outcome if you like, let's say you're writing a sermon on like faith and you're like the word faith with blah, blah, blah. It's probably going to give you gobbledygook. It probably will not be able to do that. And this is the final one I have here, which is a paper craft. So, I mean, you can really tell it to do anything. This is a paper craft collage of Moses. And so, again, you can just go hog wild with it, as it were. You can do all kinds of, oh, it's kind of mean to say hog wild with Moses, but, you know, you can go bananas with it. I'll say that because that's okay in Leviticus 11. All right, you can go bananas with it, and you can really just make whatever you want, any style you want. So many different pieces of inspiration. Again, it's really a game changer. And just to demonstrate how much of a game changer it is, I want to show you a project that I'm working on. Got to load it up here, just one moment. Okay, so this is a test that I have done with MidJourney. I have made multiple layered files, and I've used my video software, editing software, to create a complete animation. And you can see here the background's moving at a different rate than the foreground to give you that sense of depth. And I can composite all different sorts of layers of animation and things like that. And we can get very cinematic in a hurry, right? And yeah, this is a burning bush with MidJourney. You can see, you know, photorealistic. It's just amazing. I mean, the possibilities for this, so many different things that are going to be done. You'll see more and more on this channel. If you'd like me to do a tutorial on how you can make a similar video to this, just let me know. Comment below, and please like and subscribe. We're going to continue to amp things up with some wonderful multimedia presentations on, you know, how you can use this technology to better your ministries and things like that. So stay tuned to this channel for that, and I will see you around.